Hello, I'm Rain Ben Yehuda, prophetess of Judah, and this evening I am going to examine the evidence that satisfied black pastors that the Caucasian Jewish people were in fact the original HABIRU Israelites. Now I'm going to go straight into it, and we're going to go to Genesis 15:13. Here Elohim speaks to the patriarch, our patriarch Abraham, and says to him, "Know for a certainty that your offspring will be strangers in a foreign land, and they will afflict them and they will oppress them 400 years. Now the black race is the only race in history that endured 400 years of oppressive slavery that afflicted from the start to the end and thereafter in various guises and forms." Now if we go to Genesis 11:10 through to 26, we will find the chronology of the ancient HABIRU contained therein. From doing the maths on this chronology, we will find that Abraham was born in the year 1949 BC, that his son Isaac was born in the year 2049 BC. We'll also find that Jacob and Esau were born in 2109 BC. So you can use the chronology to track the dates of the patriarchs, get their actual birthday. You can then look within the scripture in the Chumash, and you'll find different events occurring, because the Chumash is not bereft of events that enable us to glean the information that is necessary. For example, Joseph stood before Pharaoh at age 30, or Jacob allegedly descending into Egypt at 130 years old. So we can use these dates that we are getting to actually give ourselves the year when the patriarchs would have been in specific places mentioned in the Chumash. Now if we go to Exodus 1:6, we'll discover here Joseph died and all his brothers, and that entire generation died out. So this 400-year slavery did not occur until all the sons of Jacob had died. So that would have been the onset of that slavery, apparently, this new Pharaoh arriving who didn't know who Joseph was. Now, the difficulty that these pastors have in trying to make this case for these Caucasian Jews being the original HABIRU Israelites are numerous, actually. If we go and we look into the Exodus, what we'll find is that the Jews, in their anxiety to steal our history and our identity, placed themselves into an ancient Egyptian timeline that had not evolved to have the technology that is being alleged, which you will find in Exodus 49, and Pharaoh pursued them with all his chariots. The fact is, ancient Egyptians did not have chariots until the reign of Tutmosis. Now, what these pastors then do, they're so anxious to attribute our history and our identity to this alien Jewish people, that they will shift their hypothesis and say, well then, okay, it occurred with Tutmosis, that's the reign where it happened in. There are numerous problems with that. Firstly, Moses would have been dead for over 1,000 years, so that's a big problem. Secondly, ancient Egypt had already been built up, the pyramids had already been built, so what precisely did Pharaoh need the HABIRU Israelites to build for him? Because we are told that they built these pyramids. We didn't build the pyramids if we were existing in the reign of King Tutmosis, because the pyramids had already been built. The third thing is, if you're saying that Adam and Eve and then Noah and with his 3 sons and 3 wives are the progenitors of the entire world, in shifting the hypothesis, you then get these people at a much later date. So creation had already been existing for over several thousand years before they came along. So you have an irreconcilable conflict, because each time you try to fit this hypothesis in to the biblical chronology, to the historical record, and to the archaeological record, what you get is it did not happen. So there was no no 400 years of slavery in ancient Egypt, yet these black pastors still persist. What is surprising is the fact that you have Jewish rabbis who have looked at Genesis 11:10 through to 26, got their calculators out, done the maths, and have been saying for some time there was no 400 years of slavery in ancient Egypt. Now they did this on the back of archaeological evidence that proved categorically that there was no 400-year slavery in ancient Egypt for that period that the Genesis chronology purports. Yet you have these black pastors in the defiance of the biblical chronology, the historical record, the archaeological discoveries, and even the people you're alleging are the original HABIRUs, declaring that they didn't endure 400 years of slavery, yet you're out there saying, oh yes, absolutely they did. You're being ridiculous and are appearing so to all academics on the planet. Now, as I said, the Jews cannot validate their history as ancient HABIRU Israelites because they were not ancient HABIRU Israelites. What occurred here is this. The HABIRU law, the Chumash, was discovered in Africa and it was then transported to ancient Egypt because, fortunately for them, Alexander the Greek, or Macedonian if you prefer, invaded ancient Egypt around 323 BC and instigated the reign of the Ptolemies, which then went on for several hundred years. The Ptolemies are Caucasian, so it was then possible to use those statues and attribute them to earlier dynasties, which has happened in many cases. Refurbishing of the ancient Egyptian tombs also saw Caucasian Jews drawing themselves into a history that they did not belong and to which they were never a part. And yet still, in defiance of all this evidence, these black pastors are still insisting that these Caucasian Jews must have been the original Israelites. Okay, let's go right the way back to the 17th century, where the HABIRU were discovered, prehistoric HABIRU in Sahara, Africa. Now, they were found practicing the circumcision rite of the HABIRU, and they were also found calling upon the deity Elohim. Now, this information was suppressed for centuries, and even in the 21st century is still being suppressed. Why? Because among these ancient HABIRU, there were no Semitic people, no European people, no Asiatic people, proving that the ancient HABIRU were only black Africans. When this information came out and was widespread about the 18th century, then the Jews rushed in again and said, okay, well, we're not the ancient HABIRU. That's perfectly correct. And you're no descendants of Abraham. Jews arrived onto the HABIRU Israelite scene at a much later date. In fact, we actually believe that they're the Essenes that had migrated into Tyre, which we call today Palestine. There they refused to observe the laws of the black HABIRU Israelites and had their own thing going, especially in particular that thing about the sons of light and the sons of darkness, and they believed that they were the promised people, etc., etc., and that the original HABIRUs and the Israelites were performing the services incorrectly, so they wouldn't even take part in the temple services and so on. And from them, Jesus issued forth, because again, there is no evidence anywhere on the planet that proves that Jesus was in fact of the Davidic line. That's an absolute rubbish. The New Testament was created in Greece. It's only written in Greek, and it was written several hundred years after the events. No one living at the time wrote this document, with the Pauline letters widely being viewed now as a fraud. So when you look at the evidence that you do have, And you don't even have to go outside of the Bible, because if you just went to Genesis 11, go through 10 to 26, chart the chronology, have a look at those dates, you would see that they did not add up. So I don't know what you look at when you say you're reading the Chumash, because it certainly isn't the law. And I don't know what your agenda is in attempting to attribute history to a people that does not belong to them, whilst declaring our claims dubious. Now, my family have been circumcised prior to slavery and ever since. They do have dietary laws within our own family. We've never eaten fish with fins and scales. We believe it's actually poisonous to us. And you have many black families, descendants of slaves, kidnapped from their own lands, brought into Europe and separated into the Caribbean, South America, the United States of America, and they do have oral traditions about the HABIRU Israelite law. So you cannot turn around to us and say you can't be what you're saying you are, because you don't know our history, you don't know what proofs we have, yet you're willing to accept the evidence of people who provide you with none. That is ridiculous. You cannot approach the law by rejecting the archaeology, rejecting the history, rejecting the actual law, to decide that you're just going to believe something you wish to believe that has no basis in truth and no basis in fact. The Jewish people are not the original HABIRU Israelites by their own admission now. You only need to read the 13 Tribes by Arthur Koestler, who states quite clearly they all originated in Europe. Indeed, the Jerome Vulgate does not mention the word Jew once. Neither does the 15th century Douay Rheims. So you know that you're dealing with a people that came after certain events that are already recorded within the histories and very easy for you to see. So it is quite deceitful for you to then point your fingers at Judeans like myself and HABIRU Israelites who do not observe the New Testament and declare us to be imposters. We are not the imposters, the Jewish people are the imposters. They are bogus Israelites. They have never been related to the HABIRU, and they are not related to the HABIRU Israelites. They are just opportunists. They stole our law, they stole our identity, and they stole our lives. And we will be indefatigable in our efforts and tireless in ensuring that that truth gets out.